Hello, everyone. It's Sidekickjason back with another Q&A, just continuing on from yesterday. So, like I said yesterday, we've been going through this Q&A, the questions from 2 years ago, and we're working through the television series portion, all the questions related to the television series in any era back in the model series versus the CGI series now. So as we've been working through those, we're about done with those. And so we're going to move over afterwards to the random miscellaneous questions, which is a section basically with all the questions that just didn't quite fit any other category. At least most of them are not Thomas related. A lot of them are about me, like random questions about what different things I like, what my hobbies and interests outside of Thomas are. So we'll dive into that section next, and there's plenty of other sections after that. And so I hope to stream today, tomorrow, potentially Thursday, but then there's going to be a hard stop there because I'll be going on vacation. And hopefully sometime after the new year, we'll pick this up and we'll just keep going with the start of the new year. So, yeah, let's get started. And like I said, we're going through the television series questions currently. All right, Stepney number 55 asked, which is your favorite of the Sharon Miller seasons? Season 16, definitely. I think that they definitely improved over the years, and season 16 was the best out of all of them. I mean, it wasn't great by comparison to pretty much any other era of the show, but if you're only looking at those 4 seasons, season 16 is definitely the best. And I really love the narrow gauge lines that we got to see in season 16. I thought that they were just beautiful. Nitrogen did a great job with them. It's kind of a shame that so little of it was transferred over to Arc. And I mean, Arc did a great job, especially with Duncan and the Grumpy Passenger. But there were certain sets and things that they did a really good job rendering that just didn't quite make it over. I think the stories overall got just a little bit better. Kind of hard to say because they all pretty much had like the same overarching plot and archetype. But I feel like some of them they added little twists and things. I remember in Flashbang Wallop the fact that at the end of the episode there was like an evening scene, and Sir Topham had brought the book and was showing them the actual like what had happened throughout the episode. And I remember sitting there like, oh my gosh, I don't think we've seen Tid in the Sheds in the evening in like forever. Like, holy cow, like it was crazy. And so I think that they like slightly improved there. So I think it's a hair above the rest, but they're all still pretty, yeah. Shout out to Express Studios and Trainboy53 and Edward Bachman 12. You guys all said hi, so I'm saying hi back. All right. Moon Chatterjee asked, which of the engines do you want to get streamlined? One from the TV show and one from your own merchandise collection. I didn't quite understand this question because all my merchandise collection is from the TV show. So I don't know what the difference was supposed to be, but I'll try and answer that as best as I can. Would have been kind of fun to see Henry streamline. I don't know. That would have been interesting. Someone on Twitter actually drew concept art for like all the members of the Steam team being streamlined. It was really fun to see. A lot of different cool ideas being thrown around and whatnot. Like for my own merchandise collection, I don't know. For my own series, it would be kind of fun maybe if James got streamlined. I feel like that there would be like some story potential with that. It would have been fun if like maybe in a future episode that like James is jealous that Gordon got to be streamlined, and so now James wants to be streamlined, but he doesn't like realize how terrible it was for Gordon and what happened, and like I don't know, there could have been a fun plot with that. I don't know if we'll really see much of streamlining in the future of the television series, especially maybe not the technical aspect of it. Like we saw Turbo Thomas and his like as a fantasy sequence and whatnot. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more streamlining in that regard and just random fantasy sequences. But the technical, like they're gonna rebuild an engine or do add these things to them. I don't think that that's going to continue in the future. I think that's kind of the last time we probably heard anything about streamlining from a technical standpoint. The Great Shining Time Station 21 Western Engine asked, which season do you think had the best soundtrack? It's hard because I really I love season 3. I've said that many times throughout this Q&A, but I believe the audio for some reason is really bad. And the quality of the audio is really bad in comparison to other seasons. So it's kind of hard to say that one's my favorite. Although a lot of the tunes and themes are my favorite. Anything from the classic seasons 1 through 5, just great music. Season 4 especially had some great music. But I really like the renditions in season 7, where a lot of them were brought back and kind of, I don't know, given a fresh new take. I like hearing the Scottish Twins theme, the Let's Have a Race theme. There was just a lot of those ones that were brought back and were really fun. So I like the season 7 soundtrack. And I think, Mike and Junior, they obviously had more years of experience, and so they were just getting better and better. It's a shame that they didn't get to continue on with the series, but yeah, it kind of leaves their music and the legacy that they left kind of just gets left in that era. So yeah. All right, Christian LaRocca, sorry if I butchered your name, asked, which season would you recommend to someone who has a child / getting back into the show? I think it would depend on what you want to get back into the show, meaning you want to get back into Thomas as a whole, or wanting to show a child or someone who maybe isn't as familiar with Thomas to just to enjoy a show that they maybe haven't seen before, haven't seen in a long time. Because if you want someone to just be entertained by a show, I think the seasons 17 through 20, any of those episodes are really good because they're, they've got the newer animation. So obviously kids they can, I don't know, there's for children with less of an attention span, it might be easier to watch those because, the mouths move and all the animation, especially some of the cool direction things that they did in season 17 through 20. So I would recommend those, but for someone to get back into Thomas as a whole, I'd go straight to season 3 personally, just because that's what I envision Sodor as. But yeah, you could start out watching season 1 directly. I've been actually doing that. I have a spreadsheet where I keep story ideas for my own series, and what I do is I have every episode of the television series listed out, and I'll watch one. And as I'm watching, if I get ideas or think of specific things oh, I should have something take place over in that area of that set, or I should have these characters, what it'd be interesting if we had seen that pairing, or what if the episode had done this type of thing. And then on the spreadsheet, I'll actually write out every single idea that I have on that episode going through. And so then I have this large list of story ideas, and then obviously only the best ones from those actually make it into story treatments that eventually become into actual full stories. And I think that helps improve the quality when you kind of help narrow down the ones that are a little more basic ideas, not as really thought out, and then you can kind of build them up later and whatnot. But I think another way to watch the series too is watching the episodes in the Railway series order, which I think season 1 for the most part is in the correct order, but there's a couple like Henry and the Elephant, Thomas Meets the Queen, a few others that need to be thrown back in specific spots. But that's a fun way that I like to watch it as well, is to go through basically the order of the stories in the books, watching the television series, even though there's some continuity errors and whatnot. But overall, I really like doing that because it builds, and you kind of get to see the Reverend's point of view of how he was building things as well. And then I like to throw all the season 3 episodes that don't actually have a place at the end of that, and then start watching season 5 after that. So that's kind of one order that I've liked to do in the past. So it's up to you how you want to watch the series if you're jumping back into it. But that's a fun way that I've seen. Merritt Trainboy asked, which Thomas and Friends episode did you see first? So the first episode I ever saw was actually Peter, Sam, and the Refreshment Lady, and that was because it was part of the sing along songs and stories VHS. And so, like, I had watched, I think it was three songs. I think it was Thomas Anthem, Let's Have a Race, and Gone Fishing, and then which were all mostly, well, primarily standard gauge songs and whatnot. And then we jumped into a narrow gauge story, which it was kind of like, oh, this is a little different. But I really, I enjoyed. I'm very nostalgic for that episode. That's why Peter Sam the Refreshment Lady is one episode that when I was filming season 2, I actually completely remade solely because it was the first episode I ever saw. And that's why I'm very fond of it. I do plan on going back and remaking my remake in the future because I really feel like my current lighting and my current set design is so much better than when I was filming season 2. Not that it was bad, but I think it's so much better now that I think I could really try and capture that season 4 feel that those episodes have, and so I want to do that over again and see if I can make an even better remake. So yeah, and then I guess the second episode I would have saw was Bulldog, obviously, because it followed in the VHS set. So yeah. The Big Station Studios, AJ Domes, King Percy fan number 6, Jamie Giraldo, Duck and Oliver fan 12, Thomas fan 2007, Ethan P., the Caledonian Engines ask, who do you want to return to the TV series in CGI? This is a hard question because, well, no, it normally shouldn't be that hard, but over when this question was initially asked 2 years ago, um, middle of season 20, there was a lot of potential, and when a character came back, they were like, I mean, what we saw with Daisy, where Daisy came back just for a short little bit of Legend of the Lost Treasure, and then got 4 episodes in season 20, which were all just great episodes, and like I think that has changed since, because then you see in season 21, yeah, we got Bulgy and Terrence returning, but I think that it's not about characters returning anymore, characters being rendered into CG. I think it's how those characters are utilized. And so it's a shame that, like, yeah, they bring back this classic character, but they only, like, they get a short cameo in an episode, or they have like a little role here, but no like main thing to themselves. I think it's how the characters are utilized that really matters. So when people are constantly going on about, we need Boko to return, we need Duke to return, or kind of like, I'd rather see Bulgy get a full episode, or Terrence get another episode to himself. Like, I'd rather focus on what they have, which I think it should be more likely, given the fact that the production budget that goes into making the television series. But there's such a change in direction with Big World that who knows at this point. Like, obviously, I would want Boko and Duke and George and Caroline and some of these other classic characters to come back, but I don't. At this point, with Big World, I don't know if I really want to see them come back. I can just picture now Boko swaying from side to side on. Yeah, I don't. I just don't think it'd be as good. The characters are great characters. Kind of leave them in the pure wholesomeness of the classic series. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I was thinking for the longest time that there was going to be that Andrew Brenner had some big idea for Duke. In the fact that they had the Arsdale Railway was now rendered. They had, and there was even kind of some references to Mid Sodor put in there, where they had like the old signal box and a couple other things. And so I really wish that. Well, I was really thinking that they were going to do something big for Duke to come back, like they maybe even like recreate his story and whatnot. Like, we had heard for a couple years prior that, like, one of the reasons why there wasn't narrow gauge episodes in the CGI series currently was because they were planning on rendering more stations, and then they'd have more locations to do things and whatnot. But obviously, that wasn't the case in the end. But it would have been very well. What I was thinking is that, okay, they're going to render more locations in the narrow gauge line. We've got the Arsdale engines back, so Duke's going to probably get like some whole big thing to himself, where maybe like like a flashback story or something where we get a walkthrough, but see it maybe it more as a railway series adaptation and whatnot. Like it would have been very intriguing to see. I was actually worried though that if they were going to bring Duke, they were going to actually, instead of having him work the narrow gauge line like everyone else and be a part of the narrow gauge family like how you see in season 4, instead they like Duke was actually going to end up at the Earl's estate and like work with Millie up there because technically, the Earl is Duke's Grace and whatnot. And so I was worried about that because I was like, don't take him away from the narrow gauge family that like we were so happy to see him join in the end and whatnot. So that was like my one concern if they were going to bring back Duke, but it wasn't the case. I don't know if that will ever happen in the future. It'll be very interesting. I mean, they brought back Cyril in season 22. I've heard rumors of other characters that are going to be brought back in season 23. Um, like if they do bring back these characters, because I mean, there have been little hints of fan service in Big World Big Adventures and whatnot. It'll be very interesting to see how these characters would be used because I just don't know if it would be that great of quality. I don't know. It'd be kind of hard to watch these classic favorites, bouncing around or doing some of these more gimmicky things and having fantasy sequences and whatnot. But who knows? We'll just have to see what happens. Terry the Homo Elf asked, "Who is your favorite background character? Rosie, Stanley, Stafford, etc." Um, I don't know exactly. I mean, a lot of these background characters are uh, hit era characters that are kind of boring. You don't really have much of a personality, so they kind of threw them. They just throw them in the background because they don't really have use for them. I think that their personalities aren't super strong, and that's kind of the reason why they've been left to the background. Um, I think Charlie's got kind of a cool design. It would be fun to see more. I think Charlie was it Charlie and the Elephant? Or was it, yeah, that that episode. I thought that was a good one. I'm kind of surprised that Charlie hasn't gotten more episodes. Like he got that whole episode to himself in season 17, and then season 18 he contributed to the episode of Not So Slow Coaches. But then since then, Charlie's just kind of done nothing. I mean, I think he's been a part of some songs and various movies and whatnot, but that's pretty much it. I think that especially like being the comedian engine that he tries to be, like there's a lot of potential there, but it's kind of hard. I think that they need to better define the roles of certain characters on Sodor, where they go and what they do. Like Stanley, we see him in the yard, but we also see him working on Thomas's branch line at times. So it's kind of like, well, where does Stanley fit in all of this and whatnot? So I don't know. Stafford's another character that I like. He's unique. He's got kind of a fun personality. Um, the character that I feel like it fits the stereo or the requirements to be considered a background character would be Oliver in the CGI series. I feel like he really hasn't. I mean, he hasn't had a lead on his own. Or he hasn't led an episode since he returned. I mean, he's been mostly in the background. Uh, Doing things and whatnot. And so I mean, technically, I would say he's my favorite background character just because I'm fond of Oliver in the classic series. So yeah. Elephant Tomica 22, AJ Domes, Peter Samfan 04, and Steaming Studios asked, "Who is your favorite narrator?" And by far, it would be George Carlin. He is my number one. He's my absolute favorite narrator. I think he did a fabulous job with the seasons 1 through 4. I mean, when I think of Thomas and the voice of Thomas, I think of George Carlin's voice. Um, yeah, I absolutely love his narration. I think my next favorite would be Mark Morgan. I think he did a fabulous job with the TV series more recently. And then after Mark Morgan, I'd probably do either Michael Angelis or Alec Baldwin, one of those two, and then the other one, and then Ringo Starr probably, and then Michael Brandon is probably my least favorite narrator out of all of them. And then no. Actually, Thomas is my least favorite narrator out of all of them. I think that Thomas shouldn't be the narrator, but that's just my personal opinion. So yeah, George Carlin definitely my favorite. Haywood Jack 2006 asked, "Who is your favorite Thomas and Friends character out of Thomas, Percy, and James?" I kind of talked about this earlier. So I think Thomas is probably my favorite character just because like I relate to Thomas and I've just kind of I don't know I've always gravitated towards Thomas even as a kid. So I really enjoy Thomas, but James is also really fun to write for. You know, he's got his personality very vain, and so you know there's a lot of things you can do with him. I've and I talked about this in another Q&A stream that we did. Basically, I realized that I have a tough time with Percy, and I didn't realize it for the longest time. But um, like I like Percy as a character, but like he didn't like I realized that he hasn't resonated with me enough for me to like want to write a ton of stories about him. So I've had to make it like a conscious effort to be like, we need more Percy stories, especially because like I mean, if you look at the classic series, especially seasons 2 and 3, like Percy has a heck of a lot of episodes. I think he might even have more than Thomas in certain cases. Like I mean, Percy definitely drives the show in the classic series, and I've realized that like, oh, okay, I need to implement more Percy, especially because that's very classic series. Like, I mean, look at all the accidents he had in season 2. So yeah, I've been working more to compensate for that and make sure that I've included more Percy episodes in the future and whatnot. So all three of those characters are really good. It's kind of hard because they didn't like technically they shouldn't interact because of the way that they are set up in the Railway series and where they work and whatnot. But you know, by season 3, when they were creating the television series and kind of drifting from the Reverend's books, it was very clear that through their marketing efforts, they realized that the favorite 3 characters were Thomas, Percy, and James. And so I'm glad that they actually got kind of some moments in season 3 where all 3 of them were together and whatnot. And so it's kind of continued on from there. I don't know if they had any moments, the 3 of them in season 4, but then season 5, like Thomas, Percy, and Old Slow Coach, like you see the 3 of them there at Tidmouth Shed, at Tidmouth Halt, and whatnot. And so yeah, I think that they're a great trio. They're fun. I think they were a little overused in King of the Railway, focusing so much on the 3 of them. But yeah, I mean, great trio of characters. The New Trains Duck asked, "Who is slash are your favorite coaches?" Um, Annie and Clarabelle would have to easily be my favorites, just for nostalgic purposes. Because I mean, I love Thomas, so obviously I'm gonna love Annie and Clarabelle as well. In the CGI era, I really love the slip coaches, and I wish they would get used more. Like I actually watched Duck and the Slip Coaches earlier today, and like I think that they're fun. They're a little different, and they were used in season 18 as part of plot devices for specific stories. And since then, like I think in season 20 and some other spots, like we see Duck pulling them in the background and whatnot. But that's pretty much it. That's all that they've been reduced to at this point. But like, man, it'd be really fun if we had gotten an episode of Duck working on his branch line with the slip coaches, and they're kind of the main characters, and like there's something going on and maybe Duck's having an argument with them or whatnot. Maybe Duck's going on about the Great Western way and whatnot, and they need to do things this way, and they're all like, we're Great Western too, but that's not the way we're supposed to do it, and kind of firing back at him. Wish we could have seen more of that. Maybe some coastal themes, things to do with the ocean and whatnot, but it's kind of a shame, especially like they were used in the stories and the plots that they had, but like you never see since then Duck actually dropping off the coaches anywhere. Like it would have been really funny in like season 20, where Duck stops by the small railway engines and whatnot, and he has like a line or two and then leaves. Which another side thought is I think that was not a good thing that they replaced a lot of Duck's lines in those stories with Thomas. But anyways, it would have been really funny if Duck had passed and like just dropped one of the coaches, and the coaches just like was left there. I wish we like it would be fun just in the background just to see that, like a coach just being left behind, and whatnot, and that being utilized more. I really wish that the slip coaches were their models in CGI were used, because they look so much better than the express coaches. Like I mean, they look full, they look like real coaches, whereas the express coaches look, they're thin, they're narrow, they just don't look right. And so I really wish that they would have maybe redone the express coaches to be like the slip coaches. What would have been really fun, I think, is if they used the models of the slip coaches to redo the express coaches, make them the right colors and everything, but leave the faces. Can you imagine Gordon with like 6 coaches behind him, all with faces? And so while he's pounding down the line, of course, Gordon with his personality is very strong headed and whatnot, so he's leading the charge. But can you imagine these 6 coaches behind him? Oh, Gordon going on again, doing this, or like they constantly nagging him. But Gordon, like is still being the powerful engine that he is taking lead. And maybe that's the reason why he's so grumpy, because he's got to deal with these 6 coaches or whatnot that are always constantly bagging on him or whatever. I think that would have been really fun, to give the Express coaches faces and whatnot. I really thought in season 21 that they could potentially do that, considering that the there was an episode called Confused Coaches, and like it was in a DVD description, so we didn't actually get to know the specific plot. But I was thinking, reading that line, it was like, oh, there's a good chance that maybe they'll pull a Henrietta type thing and add some faces to the Express coaches and whatnot, and they're the Confused coaches. But that wasn't the case. But it would have been really cool if they had done that. So that's an idea. I know for sure I have a story idea. It isn't fully written out yet. Um, so it's not going to be in season 3 or season 4. I mean, it could potentially be in season 5 and maybe be something that I film along with finishing up season 3. But I have a specific story about the Express coaches talking, just because they spoke in the, like, I think season 1 or season 2, like they were able to speak. And so they'll actually, there's an episode where they and Gordon are having conversations throughout the whole story, and it's part of the plot and whatnot. And so that's kind of my way of fulfilling this idea that I had of, it would have been fun if the Express coaches had faces and whatnot. All right. Scottish Twins fan 120 asked, "Who's your favorite pair of twins?" And I answered this before because there was a question about Bill or Ben or Donald and Douglas, and Bill and Ben are definitely my favorites. But I wanted to take a moment to talk about some of the other pairs of twins that weren't mentioned in that, because we immediately think of Bill, Ben, Donald, and Douglas, but we don't usually think of the other ones as well. And I like the Iron Twins, and I'm excited to use them in my series in the future. I'll share a little bit about season 3 as kind of a little insider thing, so you guys who are watching this will actually know something. So there is actually, in the middle of season 3 for my series, there's a 4-part episode that's about Ari and Bert, and I absolutely love it. It ties into some other stories. It really builds the characters and their work in the smelter's yard, but it doesn't like alter or change things from the television series. It just kind of deepens it, and you get to understand them more as characters. And it's just a really fun plot, and I really like what I did with it. It's fun that it's a 4-part. It's like a railway series book, and that's kind of the way I wrote it. Is that it's a 4-part story. You can watch each part individually, but it's fun because there's this overarching plot, and they all weave together, and there's like a resolution at the end with all of it. And so I'm really excited for you guys to see that. Obviously, that's going to be farther down the road. But yeah, so there's some great things ahead for Ari and Bert in my series, because I know that a lot of people were upset that they weren't in my first 2 seasons at all, and that was intentionally done because I think I didn't have Ari when I was filming season 1. I think I only had Bert at the time, and so I held off on including them because I wasn't sure if I'd have both. And so I also held off on using Stepney, Diesel, and D261 because I thought, you know what, these visiting engines are the ones that aren't really a part of Sodor. We'll save those, and season 1 can just focus on the characters that are already on Sodor, that have main roles there. Season 2, we can really dive to the narrow gauge episodes and kind of have more narrow gauge than standard gauge. And in season 3, we're going to go back to back to standard gauge, have a few narrow gauge, but we're going to have some episodes that dive into these other characters that we didn't get to see, especially the season 5 characters. I believe in between seasons 3 and season 4, in my series, I make sure that every single character from season 5, even the one-offs, the smaller characters, all of them have a main role in an episode between seasons 4 and 5. It was hard to kind of fit them all in one, otherwise it would have kind of been a season 5 theme season. and so I didn't want to do that, but I kind of spaced them out throughout the whole thing. So like Ari and Bert have a 4-part railway series book type story in season 3, and then like Cranky has an episode in season 3 and another one in season 4. Old Slow Coach has roles in 2 episodes, and then like Tiger Moth has a role in 1 episode. The Sodor Fire Brigade and another. Like all, yeah. So like all of them get utilized, even like the special coaches. So I really like tried to incorporate season 5 into my series without it being overwhelming. Like all of a sudden, like just throwing everything season 5 at once, and so just kind of weaving things together, tying them in. Yeah, even Derek gets an episode. Well, actually, he gets 2 at least. I know for sure. He might even get more, but yeah, I have a custom German Blue Sodor model that you guys have seen in my collection videos, and so I'm really excited to use that. So there are great things ahead. Great things for the Iron Twins. Oh, someone asked even Boulder. Ah, crap! You got me on that one. Actually, now that I think about it, there is not a Boulder episode in seasons 3 or 4, but I do have kind of a bigger idea that I want to do, because I didn't want to just, well, backing up really fast, I feel like I wasted an opportunity by introducing Scruffy into my series again in season 1. He just, I kind of threw him in this story called Hooray for Oliver, and he didn't really serve a purpose. And I, like, looking back on it, I really regret that, because Scruffy was a great character and what he did for the series, and he has a very strong personality and whatnot. But then just to kind of like throw him in as a part of like a minor character in the story, and he like has some influence, but not really a part of the plot. I feel like that was a shame, because I had a missed opportunity there. And so Boulder, I'm not just having the engines like, oh, they're just randomly at Boulder Quarry, or something like Boulder's going to make a cameo. Like I want to make sure it's a proper sequel to Rusty and the Boulder. So Boulder, you're going to have to wait a little bit on. Also, I think Old Bailey doesn't appear as well. Yeah, that's another one. So besides those 2, I think pretty much everyone else, Mrs. Kindly. Well, I guess Mrs. Kindly season 1. I'm thinking of her season 5 style. Dowager Hat. Is Dowager Hat? Something. I can't remember. Anyways, I try and utilize all of them. So should be a fun season. Get more use out of these twins and whatnot. So I'm excited. The Horrid Lori asked, would the TV show be better if it stuck to custom stories, or if it started to mix with Christopher Audrey stories? I think it would have been really fun if, let's, like, if I could go back, I really wish that they would have, if season 5 wouldn't have just been all their own episodes. I mean, they were good, but like, I think that there was too much pressure on a writing team as a whole to be coming up with these stories, and I really wish that they would have maybe put less effort on those, and maybe kind of done a season 3 split where half the stories would have been Christopher's stories, or maybe some of the ones that the Reverend had wrote, like get a Very Old Engines adaptation in season 5. The Caldy Fell engines, like it would have been fun if they had done mixed those in, and the Christopher Audrey stories. Half the season could be those, and then the other half to be the new season 5 stories. Do that for seasons 5, 6, and then eventually when you got to the point that all the Railway series books were used, then transition entirely to the to custom stories that are done by a writing team. And I think that would have helped kind of ease the transition, because season 5 definitely has such a different feel than seasons 1 through 4. And you can tell that it's not the same people. I mean, as someone in the U.S. audience, like noticing that Alec Baldwin was narrating was obviously a key thing. But like even as a kid, like you kind of just tell that these stories were very different. Like it was clearly wasn't done by the same people who had done the stories weren't written by the same people who had written the previous seasons. Yeah, I would have been very curious to see what they would have done in that case. It also would have been fun if they would have continued adapting Andrew Brenner magazine stories and whatnot, so kind of get a mix of all those. I think the series could have gone on for quite a while with that, and would have had a great success, great stories. I think it would have just continued on. I think the problem is that when they transitioned to season 5, they said that, oh, we don't want to keep doing the book stories because we don't want to just keep retelling, because a lot of them are very similar plots. And and whatnot. And so then they do season 5, which was very elaborate and crazy and had a lot of its own things. And then they were, after the tragedy of Magic Railroad in season 6, they dialed everything back and turned things more dull and basic. Like they were just wanting the series to continue on and survive. And it's kind of a shame because the thing that they were saying, like, oh, we don't want to be repeating plots, we don't want these the to kind of dumb down the story quality. Well, that's exactly what happened, and so it's kind of a shame because they could have kept doing that. They could have kept adapting stories if they really wanted to. It's kind of strange to look at the actual whole Railway series lineup and being like, you at least adapted close to 2/3, but there's still a whole third there. But they kind of threw in the towel and said, oh no, we've done pretty much all of them and moved on. So I think that's kind of a shame. It would have been fun to see more stuff. Maybe even some annual stories getting mixed in. Like they could have done a lot with it. Yeah, I might even come up with like a list in the future where what my ideal seasons 5 and 6 would have been like. So take the season 5 episodes, split half of them between season 5 and season 6, and then the other half write which stories I think should have been adapted out of the Railway series. I might throw that together just as a fun little brainstorm in the future. So look out for that. That'll probably be on Twitter. So if you're not following me on Twitter, you can probably go do that, so that way you can see that when I post it. I don't know. Maybe I'll post it on the YouTube community tab. It's kind of hard to relay information on YouTube as a social media platform, but yeah. All right. LNER94, Tank Engine Pride, asked your top 5 favorite engines. This is tough. So I want to say like the Thomas, Percy, Edward, Henry, and Gordon would be my 5. Um, but like I don't Percy, like I said, like I've realized that I actually have neglected Percy, and so I don't feel like he technically should be there. Um, so I don't know. That would be a tough one, but I don't think I'd replace him with Edward because I don't know if Edward, if I have been more prone to writing for Edward than Percy. Um, I don't know. That's a tough one. So probably those 5. I think those are kind of like the main 5. Um, to think of. You got two blue, 2 green, 1 red. Kind of mixes things up, and then if you're going to add people from there, you add Edward, then Toby, then Duck, and then just continue on. So those are probably my top 5 favorites. But like I've talked about previously, I've said this so many times. Like I just have a hard time in general picking favorites. So yeah. All right. Well, that is it for the television series portion. Let's see. Okay, we're about a half hour in, so I'm actually going to switch. We're going to jump over to the random miscellaneous. So, all right. So the random miscellaneous questions. Now these questions are anything from personal questions about my life that aren't Thomas related. Some of them are Thomas related, but they just didn't really fit any of the categories in TV series, toys, or anything like that. So yeah, these ones are. This is going to have a wide variety of questions. So I'm kind of throwing it here in the middle between all the Thomas stuff, just to kind of mix things up and maybe give a breath of fresh air out of all the questions that have been asked. So, if you have any television series questions that I did not answer, because the ones that we just went through for the past couple Q&A videos, those are all the ones that I had on my file. So if there was something about the television series that's not Big World Big Adventures related, because I'm covering that later, if you have any like questions that you wanted to see me answer, make sure to throw them in the comments, not the live chat, but in the comments section of this video or one of the other streams. So that way I can go through later and actually pick all of them out and do in my last stream of this series will actually be me covering all the questions that haven't been covered that you guys asked while I've been streaming. So if you have any questions that you want me to answer that you didn't see me answer, go do that. So. All right. A junction malfunction asked, any big plans that you have any big plans you have that you need help in, and you find yourself struggling a bit for your channel. So there's a couple things. I mean, like obviously people are wondering, where is season 3? Why isn't season 3 out yet? So there's clearly some sort of stumbling blocks that are preventing me from releasing my series. I don't know if it's something that I can necessarily get help with entirely. I wish I could request the help of more people in the community to help me out and get this done, but it just seems that it's more stuff that I've got to take care of on my own. Kind of the big dilemma right now with my channel is the fact that I am unable to film. So my channel is basically in survival mode. It's been in survival mode for the past year. Basically, um, I filmed in the summer of 2017. I got as much done as possible filming for my third and fourth seasons. I did as many remakes on the same sets as I could. And so now what you guys are seeing mostly on my channel is those remakes, just clips of them because I don't have the full episodes done. And it's just, my channel is just kind of going along, creating content that you guys can still enjoy on a weekly basis and whatnot, keep my channel alive and whatnot. But my channel is really not where I'd like it to be, or really thriving the way I'd like it to be. So that's obviously something that I need to that it's struggling with. But in ways that I can get your guys' help on that, I'm not really quite sure. I mean, I I've thought about like, oh, what if I did like a Patreon or maybe like a GoFundMe, because I need to. The thing is that I have to save up in order to rent a studio again, or rent a basement or some area to actually to film, because I don't have the space personally. And so like I could do something like that, but I just don't feel like that's appropriate for the audience right now. Because I'm also not in a place in school and in my personal life where I can actually take the time to film. I've got too many other things going on. So my hope is I graduate college in a year from now. I've got just 2 semesters left. My hope is that as soon as I graduate, I'll be able to move into some place. I don't know if it'll be an apartment or a house or something, because I'll have a full-time job at that point and be able to like film in my house in the basement, or have a room specifically designated just to filming and whatnot. And so that's kind of my goal right now. I think I would set up a Patreon in the future eventually, but the Patreon, I wouldn't want to do it unless I could provide solid um, benefits to people who were willing to contribute. So maybe once I'm able to get my series going again and up and running, maybe I'll set up a Patreon that people can support and kind of donate specifically to creating more episodes and things, and they go into my fund to pay for rent for a studio, or various equipment things and upgrades, and give people like exclusive access, be able to watch like new episodes early or something like that. So that's something I've thought about, which would be fun. I've thought about potentially like YouTube used to have a feature where they would you could set any video basically to be require a purchase in order to view it, kind of like a DVD type of thing, which I thought about utilizing. Maybe I could do like DVD releases for episodes that haven't been released to the public, and for those who want to see them early, they could pay, and then for those who couldn't pay, they'd be able to still see them later because they would be released normally. I thought about doing that, but then YouTube took away that feature. There doesn't seem to be any sort of substitute. Selling physical DVDs, I'm not sure the legal restrictions on that. I've kind of looked into it a little bit, and it seems like it's kind of a gray area, and just doesn't really seem worth taking the time to mess with. So I mean, there might be some stuff. Patreon is probably the most likely thing in the future. But in regards to things that you guys can help me out with as fans in contributing to my series, so right now I have a writing team that's helped me write episodes for. So season 3 is written by me and Thomas and Friends 47. Thomas and Friends 47. He actually I met him back in 2014, might even been 2013. Anyways, he sent me some stories. He wanted to contribute to my series. He had some great stories in there, and so I mean, he's been with me for nearly 5 years in creating this. And then, I mean, well, the episode Signals and Scrapes that Diesel D199 filmed for me in our little April Fool's joke. was actually written by Thomas and Friends 47. So that's been his only adaptation that's actually appeared so far. So season 3 is actually written entirely by me and him. Partially, I chose that just to thank him for, he's been so patient and he's been with me so long and kind of creating the series, and he has partial ownership in it as well, and the creation. So so season 3 is just between me and him. Season 4, however, has a larger variety of writers in it. For my writing team, there's even um, uh, there's at least 2 episodes where Enterprising Engine 93 is a guest writer for those episodes, and he wrote some fabulous stories that will appear there. But since then, as I've been going on, I've actually expanded my writing team to even more people, and we currently have a monthly writing competition between us, just a friendly little competition where basically we there's a certain theme for the month. October was Halloween, November is Arsdale. This month we're doing a Christmas theme one, and basically we each, those who want to get to write a story and whatnot. And they all submit it, and I put them into a folder on a Google Drive and share them with everyone. And then I send out a survey, and everyone on the team gets to rank the stories from favorite to least favorite. And through the various order, I take out the votes for those who voted well for their own stories, so that way that doesn't affect it. But then kind of taking the rankings, we find which story overall everyone on the team really liked, and then I like to have some sort of prize thrown in for whoever wrote the best story. So the prize for the Arsdale theme for November was to win a capsule Playrail, a capsule Playrail Rex, Mike, and Bert. So that was a really fun one. The Buried Truck wrote a great story, and he happened to win that competition. So a lot of great things. If you guys are interested in writing for my series in the future, I will warn you that basically the stories aren't going to be adapted anytime soon. I think you guys obviously realize that because season 3 isn't out yet. So it would be a while before they appear. But if you would love to see your story someday be adapted by me and included in my series, I love reading through stories that people send. So if you want to send one on over to me, my DMs are open on Twitter. I think Facebook Messenger for my page is another way. I think Instagram you can also message. Not entirely sure on that one, but basically, if you have a story you would like to potentially see adapted by me, you can send it to me. I'm gonna. I've had several other people send me stories that are just very poorly thrown together, really rushed. They just kind of put it together, not like half a page long, really short, and I've had to turn those away, and I feel bad every single time. So if I have to turn down your story, please don't take it personal. I would love to be able to adapt it, but there's certain quality things that I would like to make sure. And if you want to improve and work on those things and find out what things I specifically think need to be improved, I'd love to work with you on that. And just get more people involved in the writing, because I think the more stories that are written and the ones from those that are adapted, I think that only the best ones will get adapted in the end, which means that over the actual seasons and what appears on YouTube will be the best it can possibly be. And so that's why I like, casting my net far and wide, getting as many as possible, and then from those select the gems, the flecks of gold and whatnot. So yeah, so if you're interested in writing for my series, yeah, just reach out to me, and I'd love to see your work. Otherwise, besides that, there's not really anything else I can think of that my series can really need help with. I think in the future, what I might potentially do when adapting stories when I'm actually creating my series, because my hope is, like, obviously right now my channel is mostly remakes, but my channel will eventually transition once I finish remaking seasons 1 through 4, and we'll eventually go back to just solely being um, all about original episodes and whatnot. And I think at that point, just to help ease the burden for me to create all of that, I'm probably going to actually try and get a production team together. Maybe I'm not entirely sure how I would set it all up, but potentially have quote interns or whatnot that people could because I do own a business, and so I could do it through the business. But basically, that people could help in the production, and certain people could edit, certain people could animate, certain people could write. Well, writing, I don't think I would do it. I mean, the reward of writing is getting to see your story adapted and whatnot. But get more people involved, so that way it's not all on me to have to do every part of the story, or bringing it to life. So I think that that's a way in the future to potentially get a lot of people involved. I think it would be great if I would get to the point where I could pay people to actually do those things, where pay them a certain amount per episode, just to kind of streamline the production. But clearly, I'm not at that. I don't make money enough to actually be able to do something like that. But I think it'd be really fun in the future to be able to have something like that, and be able to get a lot of people involved. Get a lot of people to really take pride and have ownership in my series as well. Because it doesn't just have to be about me. Like the series isn't just like, oh, it's my thing. Everyone look at me. Yeah, it might be my creation, but I love to get other people involved and helping it. And I think that's where the most fun is, getting people involved. Oh, another thing. I have decided I will definitely be having a voice cast for seasons 3 and 4 and beyond. But so if you want to take part in that, you want to audition, you can in the future. I haven't announced that yet. It'll be some time before I do that. But that's one way that you can contribute and help out, is you can audition and play certain characters specifically in my series. So that's something to look forward to in the future. Enterprising Engine 93 and I have been talking, because he has his wide voice cast that he has, and so I've been talking with him more to learn more about how that functions, kind of who specific characters I would want to have played by certain people or different things. So yeah, I think that it'll make the series a lot better, and it'll be really exciting. All right. Maithwaite and Dillydale asked, are there any other kids shows you are interested in besides Thomas? Not in particular. Not there's obviously there's no show in my life that actually compares to how much I'm interested in Thomas. I mean, there's no other show that I have like a YouTube channel on, or that I spend hours every single day working on making content for. So Thomas kind of beats everyone out in that regard. But so I've got two younger brothers who are 11 and 13 years younger than me, and so I've seen when they were growing up, like I mean, I saw a wide variety of children's show at an older age. I mean, when they were 2 and 4, I was oh, what age was I? I was like 15, 16. Like, I'm very observant on what the children's content was at the time, and some of the things like were tolerable. Some children's television was definitely not tolerable, and I was not a fan of. I remember a couple of years back, my little brother, he liked Paw Patrol before it really blew up and got really big. Uh, and I remember watching, and like the episodes were simple, they were cute, but at the same time, I was like, I think my favorite thing about it was some of the music and some of the themes, and so like I wouldn't go out of my way to watch them like I would Thomas. I think it's just because Thomas has a set. I don't know, very nostalgic value to me. It's kind of has a special place in my heart. Um, but yeah, I've noticed there's kind of two different kinds of Thomas fans, that I've just noticed in the community. There's those who enjoy Thomas because whether for its nostalgic value, but usually like Thomas is the sole uh, children's television show that they're interested in. Whereas there are others I've seen who they kind of like the genre in general, and so Thomas is a part of it, but they also like My Little Pony or some of these other series. And so it's kind of interesting to see how people have different interests, and why, like, what's the reasoning behind why people are drawn to Thomas, or what they like about it. So there's not any in particular that I'm interested in, that I can just name off the top of my head. Very nostalgic for some of the shows that I used to watch as a kid on Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and Disney Channel back then. But yeah, I can't name any off the top of my head, and none of them really compare to Thomas in any way. Super James 526 asked, "Can you give any advice on how to be in a good relationship?" Um, so the picture on the right is actually me and my wife on our first date. No, that wasn't our first date. That was our second date, something like that. That was my freshman year in college, and we we had just started dating, and we dated for about 2.5 years before we got engaged, and then we got married like 4 or 6 months after that, something like that. Just earlier this year, back in May. So I mean, I've been in a relationship for a couple years now, so hopefully I have some useful advice. I wouldn't call myself very, uh, very much of an expert on the topic in comparison to others. I think that there's plenty of others that probably can give much better advice than me. But I think the key thing that I would talk about or say is kind of the best thing to be in a good relationship is communication. Um, Always be able to talk. I think that's the key thing. And you shouldn't get into a relationship with someone unless you can communicate with them. That was probably the key thing that was the difference between Lynette and all the other girls that I had been dating at the time. Because when I started school, I was dating a lot of different girls at the time. Like, I mean, I had a different date I had a date with a different girl probably every single Friday. Um, and I think some of them were actually like during the middle of the week. So there was a lot of I was going on dates with lots of girls, but most of them, like, I would go on the date, and we'd be out for a couple hours or whatnot. But then, like, oh, it's getting kind of late. Like, we would just kind of like, oh, time to wrap up and go drop her off or whatnot, and kind of just end it because things either got kind of boring or it just wasn't. I don't know. There wasn't the same connection. Like, I mean, it was fun on an initial level, but it just kind of, I don't know. You can tell either I wasn't really that interested or they weren't really that interested. But the difference between them and Lynette specifically, and why I was so drawn to Lynette, is that on our first date, actually, we kind of went up on this hill in our town, and that had a really nice view and whatnot. And we were just up there talking, and I totally lost track of time because we were talking about all these different things. Like, we were talking about Disney and Netflix and like these fun psychology tests that can like tell you more about your personality. Like, we were just discussing all these different things, and I like looked at my phone, not even like really thinking about how long we'd been up there, and it was like 1 in the morning, and I was like, wait, it's like, whoa, how long have we been up here for? Like, it was crazy. But and then subsequently after that, like after I dropped her off, or the days following, is I realized, like, man, like, I really want to talk with her again, because like I just had so much fun chatting with her. And in the future dates, like we could just always keep talking. There's always just something to talk about. I think, and that was kind of the key thing for me, um, is that we could really communicate well. So I think that the most important thing is first making sure that you're with someone who you can communicate well with, and that you can constantly have a conversation. Because if you get married, the rest of your life is a pretty long time, so you want to make sure you have plenty to talk about. But then I think it's very key, because obviously when conflicts and things arise in the future, if you're good at communicating with one another and talking things out, then you'll when those things arise, you'll be able to deal with them more effectively. And so I think that would be like the number one key advice I would give specifically. Okay. Christian Laraca, Lynette Zamora, and Annie C asked, "Do you have any pets? If so, what breed are they? Also, what are their names?" So there's a lovely picture of me back in middle school. Oh, way back in the day. That was actually, I think this picture was taken, oh, maybe a year or two before I started filming my first season, something like that. It's been a wild ride. It's been almost. I've been on YouTube almost for 10 years now, so that's crazy. Anyways, the pets that I've had over the years, I've had fish over the years. None of them stood out to me to remember any of their names. So we used to have a fish tank when I was really young, but then when I was in second grade, we actually got a hamster. We named him Sam. Sam was a good hamster. I really liked him. But then I think like a year later, something like that. I don't know how long we had him for. He eventually got cancer, and we had to, put him down. Well, My dad told me we put him down. Turns out my dad just took care of him. That's one of the sad things about growing up, is realizing that like all the innocent things you thought that were so nice, like no, adults had practical ways of dealing with those things. But anyways, so I had a hamster, and then when I was in sixth grade, I was playing night games with a bunch of my friends, and we ran into this cat in our neighborhood, this orange cat, and like the cat was super friendly, especially for being like a stray cat. Like it was really like one of the friendliest cats. Anyways, we as being sixth graders, we trapped the cat. We were like, we're gonna keep it. This is so great. And so we trapped the cat, and then my dad found out what we were doing. My dad was like, "What do you do? Like, you can't force a cat to stay here. Like, of all animals, like a cat especially, like they're not gonna stick around." And so so we let the cat go and whatnot. But I remember I like really liked that cat, and I was drawn to it. And so I like we left out some food and water for it and stuff, because we didn't know, like, I mean, it's a stray cat, was just like traveling, passing through the area, like, is it, like, why was it suddenly in our neighborhood and whatnot. And so we um we left out some food and water, and I remember the next morning, because I had asked my dad, like, oh dad, can we keep it, like, because I wanted to like put it in the garage and never lose that cat ever again. And my dad was like, no, we can't keep a cat, like, and he wasn't thrilled with the idea. Anyways, so I remember going to bed that night, and I was like really sad, like, oh, like probably never see that cat again and whatnot, being sixth grade me. Anyways, I wake up the next morning, and I walk outside in our backyard, and it's like, one of those things out of the movies where like there's like the morning dew on the ground, and like everything's like calm and peaceful. Anyways, I come around the corner, and then there's that cat, and the cat's like happy as can be, and like runs up to me and starts meowing and whatnot. And I was like, "Cat, you stayed," and whatnot. Turns out the cat never left from then on out, and eventually my parents just had to accept the fact that we had a cat at that point. I don't know why the cat chose to stay with us, but it became our cat. Um, and so that cat was named Pumpkin. You can see Pumpkin had, I think, 3 or 4 sets of kittens when I was going from sixth grade all the way up to high school and whatnot. And so she had a couple batches of kittens. You can see the kittens there in the picture. The orange one in particular, that's the color that Pumpkin was. Sadly, though, my senior year of high school, so I had Pumpkin for about 6 years, and then she fell. Well, she climbed up behind our garage door, and my mom accidentally turned on the garage, and didn't realize that the cat was up there. Well, the cat tried to jump but couldn't. Got its leg trapped in the garage door. Got stuck. Broke its leg. We took it to the vet basically, and it was kind of a lost cause at this point. Either we needed to amputate the leg, or we needed to put down my cat. And that was a really tough decision. And I knew I was going to be leaving within about 6 months, leaving from home, and I wouldn't be around anymore. And I just really felt bad for that cat, because I mean, I really loved Pumpkin. She was a great cat, but I felt bad because she wasn't going to have a good quality of life. And I mean, she wasn't an indoor cat at all. Like, she was she was entirely outdoors. She would go play and explore, and like there was other cats in the neighborhood, and they would do like lots of things together. And so I knew that her quality of life, being with only 3 legs, was going to really take a hit to the quality of life and whatnot. And I couldn't bear that, and so I thought it would be better to put her down in the end. And that was a tough decision to make. So I put down Pumpkin, and then I haven't had a pet since Pumpkin. But my little brothers, they've had cats, but my family has had a terrible track record with cats because my dad has accidentally ran them over. And like, I can laugh about it. I mean, it's really sad, but what happened was they got this one cat. I was off at school. They had this cat for about a year. It was named Ash. It was a really nice cat. But then my dad, one time, it crawled up inside our car one morning, and then my dad was like driving. We had moved to a different house at this point, and my dad was driving, and then the cat dropped down in front of one of the tires, and my dad accidentally ran it over. And my siblings were so sad. I mean, Ash was a really good cat, so it was really sad that we lost Ash. And so that was really sad. It was heartbreaking. They didn't want to get another cat because it was too raw of a moment. And so about a year later, I'm off at school at this time, and me, Lynette and I, this was like the funniest thing. Like I hate to say it's funny, but like we're there, and my dad texts me and my brother and says we got a new cat. Like it had been a year since the last one had passed, and he sent us a picture of this cat, and it didn't wherever he took the picture didn't look like our house, and I was like, you're lying. There's no way that cat's real. Like you're just trying to pull our leg and whatnot. And so my dad's like, no, the cat's real, like and whatnot, trying to convince me that the cat was actually legitimate. Well, a week later, I never like I was down at school, so I didn't go up and visit my home and ever get to see the cat. But a week later, the exact same thing with Ash happened again to this cat, like in the exact same way. And my dad said it was freaky because he was driving and all of a sudden he like felt the bump and whatnot, and he was like, oh my gosh, like that cannot be the cat again. Like, I mean, it was basically a year later, almost to the date. And he said he got out of the car and it happened the exact same way both that time and then a year later. But basically, there was a neighbor was outside her house and had seen it happen, and she like yelled out both times, like, "Is that your cat?" And like, I mean, it's terrible, but like it was like how ironic that this happened twice in a year apart. I mean, they only had the cat for a year or for a week, and so like I never got to meet that cat, and my siblings were so depressed after that. And my dad couldn't even tell him that he was the one that killed both cats. Like, he felt so bad, and so they said that the cat accidentally got ran over, but they didn't say who ran it over. And then I think it was a couple months later, they got another cat named Oreo, and that cat's been an interesting cat. It's been an indoor cat. My dad softened up over the years, and now he like really likes the cats. Like Pumpkin, he got really tight with. Probably about 2 or 3 years after we had Pumpkin, he would let Pumpkin come inside in the mornings when it was cold and whatnot. But it was yeah, really. We've had an interesting history with cats, and then Ash, or not Ash, Oreo now is a interesting cat. Kind of has a well, it's a boy, so that's a difference between the other cats that we've had and whatnot. But yeah, the cat gets away with a lot more than Pumpkin was ever allowed to, which I always criticize my parents for. Like, why do you let Oreo do all these terrible things in the house, but you always were after Pumpkin and whatnot? But anyways, it's been I don't know how many years now since then. It's been probably almost a decade so since we got Pumpkin. But anyways, then we did have another cat. This is kind of a not a cat. We actually did have a dog at one point when I was in fourth grade. So a story that I don't think I've shared on YouTube. So I mean, I've shared the story about my mother passing away, but I haven't shared the story about how I actually had a brother who passed away. And so when after my dad remarried, about 6 months later, they found out that my stepmom was pregnant, and it was really I was like elated because I was in fourth grade at the time. I grew up without having a mom, and so I never thought I'd ever be an older brother to anyone, and so I was really excited about that. But then there was some complications in the pregnancy, and so my little brother was born prematurely, and he only lived for about 11 minutes. And so his name's Jack, by the way. But so he only lived for about 11 minutes. But then after that, it was really a hard thing on my family. It was really hard for my mom to come home from the hospital empty-handed. And so my dad actually got a dog. It was a pug, and we named it Armani. And so that was kind of the makeup thing for our family. And we had Armani for about 4 months, but I think it was just kind of a hard time in the family, and I don't think a dog was a good replacement for the situation. And so eventually we did. I don't know if we gave away our money, but we found a better owner who could take better care of the pug, and so that we only had the pug for I think like 4 or 6 months, something like that. So yeah, then that's the history I've had with the with pets. So those are all the pets I've had. There's some funny stories that I've told. I probably went on way too long on those, but just thought I'd share. Okay, this will be the last question because we've gone over an hour now. I'll hopefully continue on tomorrow. So Joseph Rogers asked, "Do you have siblings?" And yes, I do. So I have four siblings. You can see in the picture here that on the right of me, I have my older brother. He's about 3 years older than me. He is a band teacher, doing really well. Then I've got above me is my little brother Hudson. So he was born about 2 years after Jack, and so I mean, technically, my the two brothers on top there are technically only my half brothers, but I mean, I don't think anything of it. They're as much my brothers in any way as my older brother is. So love them. They're a hoot. I really enjoy my little brothers. So we've got Hudson there on top of me, and then my little brother Chandler is on top of my older brother Jeffrey. And so, yeah, they're great. I mean, they made our household very lively. Being 11 and 13 years older than them, they sure kept the house interesting. It made things as a high schooler, it got kind of annoying at times because like a lot of our family activities and things were catered around these young boys that were 2 and 4 and whatnot. And so but I sure love them. They keep things entertaining. They absolutely love Lynette too, and so they like we were just up on Sunday visiting my family, and they're just an absolute hoot to be with, to play with. It's fun. They're a little older than the Thomas target demographic nowadays, but it was kind of fun because I used to be able to kind of test some of the ideas and things and kind of see the direction of Thomas and talk with actual children about what their thoughts were on it. And it was really interesting to see what things they found interesting and what things they didn't. So that's why I guess I'm coming from a background when I look at like things like Big World Big Adventures, and I know that kids aren't as stupid as what I think Mattel kind of and some of the current creators of Thomas believe, that they can kind of do some of these simple, cheesy, gimmicky things, and kids are just gonna blindly go along with it. Because I mean, talking with my little siblings and stuff, and remembering from my own childhood, like kids aren't. I mean, they're observant, they're smart, they pick up on things, they notice patterns and observations and whatnot. So yeah, so that's kind of my background. With my siblings. So absolutely love them. They're all great. So I mean, we've had our fair share of arguments and fights, but it's a little easier to wrangle in two little brothers when I'm like double their height, and so I like to give them a hard time and make sure that I keep them in line. So, but they're fun. So love my family. They're great. Um, yeah, so we're gonna call it a day now on this Q&A. So tomorrow, hopefully, I'll be able to live stream. Tomorrow's my wife's birthday, actually, so I don't know when I'll live stream. Got a lot of stuff I'm planning for her just to celebrate. But yeah, so at some point I'll continue on with these miscellaneous random questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer more of them. If you've got questions related to random things that don't fit pretty much any other category, I'll probably in the next one put the list of categories again for you guys to see which ones we'll be going over. But if you have any other questions, be sure to throw them in the comments, not in the live chat, and then I'll try and cover them later at the end of the Q&A. But that's it for today. Appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully I will talk to you soon.